Welcome to I Caught It on Audio. This is Ride or Die episode 20. Soundgarden, part 1.
Welcome to I Caught It on Audio. We have a new Ride or Die series for you. This time we're going to be diving deep into the discography of the grunge band Soundgarden. This is the first of two parts. We're going to be covering the albums Ultra Omega OK, Louder Than Love, Bad Motofinger, and the scattered tracks across the paths, songs that were released during the first half of the band's recording sessions. And where we're going to start is at the very beginning. In 1986, they had a song on the Deep Six album, which I believe was just a compilation of grunge bands in the Seattle area. It's got the Melvins, Green River, and a bunch of those. And they had one track on there, Tears to Forget.
Two.
Did they have two? Oh, and Heretic. Okay. Within a year, they came out with the Screaming Live EP, which had 6 tracks on it. And then a year after that, they came out with the Fop EP, which had another 4 tracks on it. And all of this was, I believe, on Sub Pop. Well, it looks like the first one was C&Z Records, but I don't know what you guys thought. Well, I know what Jamie thought, but this was kind of reminiscent of Red Hot Chili Peppers' early days for me. Not so much tonally. I mean, a little bit. There was some similarities, but it seemed to me like there was just a whole bunch of not very good songwriting. Dan, what did you think about this early era?
Yeah, I thought there were some good ideas, but they didn't really coalesce into full, enjoyable songs all that often.
Yeah, or at all.
I liked a few songs off of the Screaming Life Fop, those 2 EPs. Let's see, what did I like? I liked Hunted Down, Hand of God, and the Green River cover, Fop. But it's also in the context of them being better than the other songs, not that they're great songs,
Sure, right. Of the songs from that section, those are the ones that were tolerable.
Yeah, those were the best ones for me. And I didn't find any of it quite as bad as the very early Chili Peppers stuff. The production isn't very great, and it feels pretty rough. And it doesn't feel like the song. It's like they haven't quite figured out how to turn these ideas into songs. And there's a couple of there's like some scattershot. Like they sound like Soundgarden, but they clearly just discarded them as they went forward. So I thought it was interesting to listen to, and there were a few songs I wouldn't mind hearing again. But for the most part, I would agree that it wasn't great. Zach, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with Dave on this one that it did have a very early days Red Hot Chili Peppers feel to it, not in the same style or anything, but in the quality and the sort of where they were coming from. It was interesting. I think the first song on Screaming Life was had a very 80s hair metal type of feel to it, and I think they just were really sort of not knowing what to do. Like the music had settled into certain patterns at that time, and they were trying to find something that was maybe a little bit new and exciting. And of course their personnel, they were kind of changing things around as they were getting going, because they had Yamamoto was the bassist guy, and Kim Thayil came in at one point. And I think I was reading that Chris Cornell was actually playing drums on one of their earlier iterations of the band before they were officially called Soundgarden. I did want to give a quick little story about Heretic. I actually really like that one, but I didn't know that it was them for a long time. I first heard it in the movie. It was the early 90s movie Pump Up the Volume with Christian Slater. It was a fun song in there because it was just kind of like this sort of punky type of raw energy song. And I had no idea that it was Soundgarden, and it took a really long time. And in fact, it may have actually been listening to it here that it kind of the light switch flipped on, and I was like, wait, that was from that movie. But I do like that one because just sort of how it was used in the movie, and just sort of like the rawness of it. But I think with these two EPs, I combined together, whatever you want to call them, Screaming Life and Fop. I did like the Nothing to Say song, the kind of droniness of that. I did like the Little Joe song, but the rest of them I just kind of felt very
Little Joe was garbage. I thumbs down that one.
I did not love Little Joe either.
Okay, well, I mean, that's fine. You guys can.
But Zach, this is a safe space, and you are welcome to be wrong. All right,
it was different sounding from their other songs for sure.
Yeah.
It stood out.
Look, I don't have to justify myself to you.
Zach, you promised me that you didn't like that style of singing that one time. Therefore, you're not allowed to like this ever again.
Okay. Anyway, we can move on. Jamie, what did you think about these?
Thank you.
There's a girl here today.
I actually liked Heretic as well. I don't know. It was heavy metal-ish, but I would listen to it again. So I'll preface this by saying I'm not sure of the order of the songs anymore after my YouTube music mishap of really not hearing all the songs. But the first song and the last song on Screaming Life, Tears to Forget, and Sub Pop Rock City, I hated. I don't know. It was a lot of screaming and not scream singing, just screaming, it felt like.
Yeah.
I didn't mind Hunted Down, Entering, Nothing to Say. Kind of like the middle of that album was okay. It was like almost monotonous, but like, okay. I don't know how to describe it. It was not super dynamic, but that was okay. It was like lulling. Fop, which I thought was really kind of ridiculous, kind of grew on me. And I didn't realize that was a cover, but it definitely sounds different, like funky more than, some of their other songs. So, but yeah, I didn't like this album at all. I didn't want to go back and listen to it after the first time. After the second time, I found some things that I liked. So
how did you feel about Little Joe?
Not my favorite. I don't know. I mean, I didn't think it was garbage, but
again, this is a safe space, so it's perfectly okay for you to be wrong about your opinions. That's
I think it's
fine.
clear. It's pretty clear that one's not going to make the playlist. But I'll die on the Little Joe hill.
Okay, I won't join you there, but
okay.
Yeah, I didn't mention Heretic. I did give that the thumbs up because it's Dave, you did the order basically when the song track was released, right?
Yes.
Yeah, but that one was good, and I also remember it from Pump Up the Volume, Zach. But yeah, I would say that if I never heard any of these songs again, I wouldn't be mad about it. But I think you're right, Jamie. On second listen, I actually liked this album a little bit more. The first time I was like. It didn't feel like they were actual songs almost. And like you mentioned the singing and it's like he's trying stuff out, but he hasn't figured out how to make it sound good quite yet.
Exactly. Yeah. He hasn't found his voice. And this one really surprised me because the other Ride or Dice that I've been on, Counting Crows, Weezer, Toadies, they've all started out like their strongest album was their first album. So this was different for me. I know you all did like the Red Hot Chili Peppers and I listened to that one. And so this was a new experience for me to kind of go back to things.
You made a great choice not doing the Red Hot Chili Peppers one. Those first 4 or 5 albums were rough.
I was just going to say one last thing that it feels like the ingredients are there for magic to happen. It's missing something. They've got what they need. They just got to sort of get the writing and the production stuff, all those components into place. I feel like that's a good segue to Ultra Mega OK, which to me was a little bit better in a lot that
It was Ultra Mega OK.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I would describe
yes.
it.
That is a good title.
That is exactly how that is the perfect description. It sums it up. It absolutely does.
Yeah. Well, we're out of Sub Pop now.
Oh, right.
There seems to be a little bit more polish to it. It's still not quite there.
Yeah.
Zach, I just realized I I interrupted you. So,
oh no,
else were you gonna say?
I mean, you're going on the same track that I was going to go on, which is like there's some pretty cool high points. Like I really like the Beyond the Wheel.
Yes.
I liked their cover of Smokestack Lightning. The little instrumental interludes between like the 665 and the 667. Those are fun. I don't really need to listen to them a lot, but it's nice to kind of mix it up. I think they're starting to kind of find their edge. Beyond the Wheel, I think, is my favorite, just because it's really got the vocal. Like he's starting to, he does the lows, then he does the highs.
It's the first time you see Chris Cornell show that he is one of the generational level singers. Where he's one of a kind.
Yeah.
Beyond the Wheel is definitely my first happy moment in this playlist.
You've even got the subtle horns on Flower, and like it's not as vanilla hard rock as what I feel like some of those earlier songs were in the last ones, the EPs. So I think they're definitely going the right direction, but it's not quite there just yet. Dan, what do you think?
I agree. This is a step forward. Some of the notes I had were that it's pretty muddy sounding, but it does sound a lot bigger than those EPs. Like I feel like they spent a little more money on it. And you're right, Beyond the Wheel's probably the highlight. It's funny because it's barely a song. Like it's like one riff repeated like 75 times.
Yeah, but when it's that deep, grungy, dirty riff that they're so good at, come the later albums.
This is a preview for me, a preview of Slaves and Bulldozers, which we'll get to later. It's like the first version of that. It's probably the highlight of the album. The other songs that I quite liked were Mood for Trouble, Incessant Mace, and all right, I'm not going to try to defend this in any real way, but I really like Circle of Power. Even though it's got some pretty god-awful singing on it from Hiro Yamamoto.
Yep.
Something about that song I really like. I do not expect other people to like it, but that one struck me as well. But yeah, I think this is a step forward, and Ultra Mega OK is probably a good description for it, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What about the 1 minute of silence? Did that confound anyone when it just went dead for a minute?
No, because I like to look at the title and so I was like,
I was not. I had gotten out of my car, gotten back in, Incessant Mace wrapped up, and then it went silent. Like, oh crap, what's going on with YouTube music now?
I think it's funny that when artists will like make a very expensive joke, like they added a track to an album that's just like a joke about John and Yoko Ono, it's a silence. What's the point, but yeah, that was kind of a fun thing.
Yeah. So this one came out in 88, and just I thought it was important to kind of get a reference as to what was going on in music during this very early era in Soundgarden's career. So everything we've talked to came out in a matter of 2 years, between 86 and 88. And in that time, Chili Peppers' Freaky Styley came out, Appetite for Destruction came out, Mofo Party Plan came out, and Guns N' Roses' GNR Lies also came out. We haven't seen any other grunge come out at this point. Mm-hmm. The first, and I know the Melvins had been, and a couple other bands that didn't get real big, but are, fundamental grunge bands had been recording stuff prior to this. But the first real stuff where you've got like Mudhoney and Nirvana, their first albums are 89, which is a year after this. And then you've got Alice in Chains in 90. And then you've got, 91 where it exploded with Nirvana's Nevermind, Pearl Jam's 10, Temple of the Dog, Smashing Pumpkins' Gish, Mudhoney's got their second album out. So this is still way before grunge became a real thing. It's all underground. So it's not a big surprise that this is not, and we're just barely starting to see the grunge take effect in their sound. So I think that's an important thing to note as to in their evolution as to why it's not the Soundgarden we were raised on necessarily, because we all came to them in the 90s. But yeah, then their next album came out, unless anybody's got anything else from Ultra Mega.
Did Jamie talk about this one much? I'm trying to remember who talked.
No,
it's confusing
really.
with four people.
Go
ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, their there weren't any that I don't think I thumbs down to any, but I liked Flower. I also liked Beyond the Wheel the best. Mood for Trouble, Circle of Power, Smokestack Lightning, Incessant Mace. And then, there were just a couple of others that were interesting to like listen to and think about, like Nazi Driver and then Head Injury as well. I don't know. They like to, they're very poetic.
Yes.
That's generous of you to say that.
So I can't think of the literary device that I'm thinking of, but like walking a tightrope in 2-ton shoes, and I don't know, just stuff that makes you think.
Yeah,
it's interesting to listen to versus screaming, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I think he's trying really hard to figure out how to write lyrics, and I think some of it works and some of it doesn't in the early stuff.
There are 2 bonus tracks here. They were B-sides from Flower, I believe, Toy Box and Twin Tower, and neither of those particularly stood out for me. Did you guys have any thoughts on those?
I liked Toy Box.
Yeah, I like Toy Box as well. Twin Tower was an okay instrumental, but I didn't really care for it that much.
Yeah, I like Toy Box as well. And Twin Tower, I mean, I think it's pretty insensitive of Chris Cornell to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. What the
that
heck,
close
man?
to the actual incident.
Yeah.
Only 12 years away or 13 years away. So
Right.
kind of insensitive, but but yeah, Toy Box I thought was good and I liked it.
So what's everyone's favorite song from Ultra Mega?
It's Beyond the Wheel for me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Same for me.
Same here.
Same. Yeah.
Yep.
I think that one's a pretty easy one. Oddly, it's not the single. Flower was the single, but Beyond the Wheel for sure. So then in 89, Louder Than Love came out. Now we're on A&M Records, which is, I think, another big step up production-wise for them. If I'm not mistaken, A&M is one of the bigger record companies at this point. And I think it's who they stick with for the majority of their remainder of their career recording time. And like I said, Mudhoney and Nirvana had just come out with their debut albums, and we're getting to sound a little bit more like grunge now. Yeah, Jamie, why don't you tell us why don't you start off with this one?
Yeah, I liked this one a little bit more even. Gun stood out to me. I like the progression of that song. It, the tempo changes and how the dynamics kind of change. I liked Power Trip. I thought it was interesting, the full-on Kevin's mom, and then they kind of revisit that later. And I got some flashbacks of listening to your Red Hot Chili Peppers podcast at one point when he screams out "mommy."
Oh no.
So it was kind of funny. It's like sometimes it's kind of fun to have some of those comedic sort of songs on there.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it was a favorite, but I like it when I can think about these things and connect different things. The only one I really didn't like a lot was Big Dumb Sex. I don't know. Maybe I'm a prude.
Well, they went full on explicit on this album.
Yeah.
Like, every track has got the E tag next to it. They didn't hold back lyrically on this one. And I kind of agree with you that kind of held some of the songs back for me because it wasn't veiled or
no.
It was just blatant, and it's not very poetic like Ultra Mega OK was,
I'm sure he's joking with the Big Dumb Sex, but it's a joke that I don't want to listen to over and over again.
Exactly.
Same. Yeah.
Dan, what did you think of this one?
Yes, again, a small step up. I agree with Jamie. The production is better and it's a lot brighter sounding, which is a nice change from Ultra Mega OK. Feels pretty full, pretty polished. So it's starting to sound like Soundgarden, even if the songs aren't quite there yet.
Right. The mud is deliberate now. Like if it's dirty and muddy, it's because that's the way they wanted it to sound, not because...
it's balanced. It's not all sludge,
Right.
My highlight songs were Ugly Truth, Hands All Over, Full On Kevin's Mom, Loud Love, and Full On also. I enjoyed the bringing that back around. But this is a much more listenable album, I think. And I didn't really dislike any of the songs. None of them really rubbed me the wrong way, other than I don't need to hear the, Chris Cornell saying fuck anymore on Big Dumb Sex. That wasn't enough of that. But yeah, pretty good step forward. Not an album I would just toss on, but definitely there's more tracks I liked on this than we've gotten thus far. What about you, Zach? What are your thoughts?
I'm gonna be the outlier here. I didn't really care for this one. I just felt it was kind of boring. It didn't feel like there was anything that really grabbed me, or really the only one that I feel was memorable was Big Dumb Sex, and that's just because of the panned fucks in each side of my headphones every time.
Fucked in each ear.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
just like you like it.
So I listened to it, I think probably 3 or 4 times through, and there wasn't anything that really like grabbed me, and I felt like I wanted to revisit. So this one for me was kind of a low point. I don't really have anything else to say. What about you, Dave?
Well, I wouldn't say it was the low point. The EPs are definitely the low point, but I don't think it was. It was definitely a production quality step forward, and I appreciated that. But I don't think they had quite gained much songwriting ability yet over Ultra Mega. And there was nothing that, like you said, there was nothing that stood out either. Like Beyond the Wheel from Ultra Mega was phenomenal. I loved it. I just want a better recorded version of it. I didn't have that feeling on any of these tracks. Now, I didn't dislike any of these either. The explicit lyrics got a little tiring. There's no doubt about that. I feel like had 15-year-old me listen to this one, I'd have been all about that. So, I think the highlight of this section is the B-sides, the Come Together and Fresh Deadly Roses. If I'm being honest, those were the only two from this that I thumbsed up.
Yeah, Come Together was on the Hands All Over B-side and on an EP collection.
Yeah, and then the other one was on Loud Love. And I liked the B-sides better, if I'm being honest. I liked Come Together. I know it's a song that's been abused by lots of bands.
Bush,
yeah. Aerosmith had a mediocre version of it. It was pretty much straight track, note for note track. But I like that this one felt a little different. I don't know that I like it better than the Beatles version. I don't know. And maybe we can dive deeper into this in another podcast. But I don't know. What do you guys think of those B-sides? Jamie,
I like Come Together.
Zach, you like to Come Together, you said?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How about you, Jamie?
Yeah, it was okay. I don't know. Covers that are done over and over are not really my thing.
Yeah.
Like the covers that have been mentioned already, I didn't know they were covers. But yeah, it was okay. Fresh Deadly Roses was okay. I don't know. I don't have a lot to say about that one.
How about you, Dan? Anything on those two?
I thought it was a good cover of Come Together. It's not my favorite Beatles song, but it did sound more like Soundgarden. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you talked about the Aerosmith cover. The Aerosmith cover definitely sounds like Aerosmith, but they are very faithful to the Beatles version. This felt like they did a little bit something with it. But again, this is a cover we've heard a million times, and it's fine. It's a good song. I like not having that sort of like back delayed percussion thing because that gets tiresome when people put it in the covers. So that was nice. And I did like Fresh Deadly Roses. I gave that a thumbs up. But you're right. Beyond the Wheel is better than anything on this album. I just felt like it was more consistent and listenable because it sounded better. Like the production sounded better. I think we're about to take a leap forward after this. Shall we mention our favorite songs if we can come up with one? I would say Hands All Over for me is my favorite on this one. Or maybe Full on Kevin's Mom. I don't know.
I don't know. I don't think I have a favorite from this one.
I'm going Big Dumb Sex.
You do love the Big Dumb Sex.
I do.
I like Full on Kevin's Mom. So if I had to pick one, that's the one I would pick.
That and Get on the Snake. These are some pretty horny song titles. It's like settle down. There's a cold shower available, Chris. If you want to go take one.
Every time I listen to Full on Kevin's Mom, I think about Home Alone. I don't know if that's what this is about.
No.
Listen, whatever you're into, Dave, is totally fine as long as Jamie doesn't mind.
Yeah.
But that's the only Kevin's Mom that I could think of that would have been relevant around this time. At any rate, so up next is Bad Moto Finger. again, we're on A&M Records, and oh boy, that opening lick on Rusty Cage.
Mhm.
Oh, what a breath of fresh air. It's like, okay, we've arrived.
Yep.
We're to the Soundgarden. We're to Soundgarden doing Soundgarden, you know? And man, I didn't realize how much I liked this album. This album was always a second place to Super Unknown for me, and so I never spent a ton of time with it. But compared to the first 4 years of their recordings, man, this is good stuff. You can tell they spent some time with the writing. You've got full cohesive songs with themes and beginnings and ends, and the production quality is really good again. Or finally, and man, it's just so good. Dan, what are your thoughts on Bad Motorfinger?
Yeah, this is a leap forward. I feel like they've harnessed what they're trying to do finally. The songs are both much catchier and also still weird. There's still like weird time signatures going on, and the Soundgarden way of where you don't really, sometimes you can't tell it's a weird time signature because the riff is well written. This has been always a favorite of mine. My comparison, Dave, between this and Super Unknown is Siamese Dream versus Melancholy in the Infinite Sadness.
Okay,
where I would have to say Melancholy probably has, because there's so many more songs and there's so many highlights, but like there's something about the Siamese Dream Bad Motorfinger where it's like it's a little more concise and it hits really hard and the highlights are really high. I really love this album. I'll have to decide if I like him more than Super Unknown when we listen to that next. But we have a new bass player also, we should mention.
Yes.
Ben
And
Shepherd has moved in. And I don't know how much of this is down to him, but he has some really cool like bass licks, especially on Slaves and Bulldozers, which is one of my absolute favorite Soundgarden songs.
Yep.
This is, like I said, much more melodic. The songwriting's improved. I was going to write down my favorite tracks, but I just wrote all of them because I like this whole album.
Yeah, me too.
But the first 4 songs on this album are just amazing.
Yeah.
And then I've always liked Riot or Mind Riot and Drawing Flies also, but really there's not a bad song on here for me. Zach, you were saying something. You want to go ahead?
Yeah, I was going to bring up the whole bassist thing. I think that does actually, I'm not trying to downplay Hiro Yamamoto's involvement, but I think Ben Shepherd brought something very different to the dynamic of the band and some of the writing as well.
Absolutely.
The only song I didn't thumb up was Face Pollution, and it's not because I don't like it. It's just, it's not quite as high up as the rest of them, but the rest of them are all thumbed up. And quite frankly, if I had been exposed to this before Super Unknown, I'm pretty sure this would be even higher than it already is, and it's pretty dang high in my book. Jamie, what do you got on this one?
Dave mentioned earlier, Super Unknown was kind of, for me, the first Soundgarden that I ever listened to. And then hearing Rusty Cage and Outshined and Slaves and Bulldozers and those songs from Bad Motorfinger, I actually thought that Bad Motorfinger came out after Super Unknown. So, I mean, just without really looking into anything, that's not really how I listen to music. I don't know, listen to what I like, I guess. So, but yeah, this is a noticeable change. You know, part of it is I listen to these songs all the time. You know, also you hear the difference and you hear the Soundgarden in it.
Yeah.
And mine ends at Mind Riot. So
yeah, we had some trouble with the YouTube music because
so I'm gonna have to go back and I have to like do a little update when we do our second one.
Yeah,
that's right. We should check in with the songs you didn't actually get to hear.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I have a quick question for Dave and Dan. Then I was going to pose it to the whole thing, but since you didn't listen to it, and this doesn't really apply to you. But Holy Water, do you guys feel like that is very, very reminiscent of Mailman from Super Unknown? That it's almost like, to me, it feels kind of like a prequel, because Mailman is one of my favorite songs on Super Unknown.
Yeah.
And Holy Water, just, it has that same type of guitar chugging lick. And then some of his, Chris Cornell's vocal patterns are very very similar. I thought anyway. I don't know. I was curious what you guys thought. If you got any of that, or if I was just, maybe it's because I spend so much time listening to Mailman that it's just really more present.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and check. That didn't leap into my head unbidden, but I'll go back and listen to it, and we'll update next time when we're talking about the later albums.
Yeah, I can see that. I'll have to look into it too when we get into the next one, but that's an interesting idea. One of the things I really liked about this album is they had some saxophone in it. And we had
sax positive, Dave.
I am sax positive, as we all know. What is it on Drawing Flies and that Room 1,000 Years Wide? We've got this great saxophone, but it's not your typical jazzy or big band or anything like that, or it's just this like broken saxophone that's playing along with the guitar, or I don't even know what it's doing, but I love it. And it kind of reminds me of early Aerosmith when they would have the saxophone player play on a couple tracks. It just had a great feel to it, especially on Drawing Flies.
Yeah, it's more like it adds to the overall sound rather than sounding like the traditional way that you would hear the instrument. Like it fills in like atmosphere.
Right. Instead of just being, and now for the saxophone, it's the saxophone's going along with the whole thing. It was really cool. So we've got a whole bunch of B-sides and other tracks here to go along with this album.
What's our favorites?
Oh, favorite from
Bad Motorfinger? Yeah.
Jamie, what's your favorite?
Mine is Rusty Cage. I think a lot of that actually has to do with the Johnny Cash cover.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I really like that one. But the first 4 on this album are awesome.
Yeah. How about you, Dan?
Slaves and Bulldozers for me. I mean,
Zach?
There's a lot of the great songs on there, but that's my favorite.
Yeah, I think it's down to Slaves and Bulldozers and Rusty Cage. I think since I've heard Rusty Cage so many times and I do love it a lot, I think I'd probably go with Slaves and Bulldozers because I want to spend more time with that one.
I've got to say Rusty Cage, that those opening dueling guitars are phenomenal.
Yeah, so cool.
Just amazing. Absolutely love it. And then the rest of the song is perfect Soundgarden grunge. So
that's a great example, Dave, that opening riff of, it seems like they've learned to mix in some restraint.
Yes.
Into their wall of sound, sludge, Yep. And that sort of 2 high-pitched overlapping guitars that are just kind of by themselves, and then the riff kicks in.
Yep.
But it lets that song really breathe, and I think they do a lot more of that on this album.
We finally have really good songwriters now in the band, or they've developed their ability to write songs, and it's like a breakthrough. It's like a leap forward. So on these B-sides, I actually liked a lot of them. The only ones I didn't give the thumbs up to were Show Me, She's a Politician, and Touch Me. I quite enjoyed. There's some interesting covers mixed in, and yeah, I thought they were all good.
I think Birth Ritual was from the Singles soundtrack, if I remember correctly, because I think
you're right. Yeah,
heard that one quite a bit. I liked Into the Void, South, Stray Cat Blues, Touch Me, and Birth Ritual. Those were my top ones.
I like Girl You Want. I think that's
an interesting cover.
Yeah. Who originally
Devo,
wrote
right?
that? Huh?
That's Devo, right?
Is that a Devo song? Okay.
Yeah, it's a Devo song from 1980.
All right. So then I think the last thing we're going to do here is, which album do you pick out of these? We'll call it 4 albums.
Oh, I don't know. I wonder.
And if you're ride or die at this point.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. That's a good point.
It's so hard to say ride or die when it's the first album so rough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But obviously, Bad Motorfinger is clearly the best album in my mind.
Without a doubt. Yeah. I don't think anybody thinks that any of the other albums are better than Bad Motorfinger. And if they do, it's not a safe spot here. So do not voice that opinion.
Get out.
Yeah.
But would you be ride or die at this point? If this is all you had of Soundgarden?
They'd be a one-album band.
Yeah. I don't think I would either. I don't think Bad Motorfinger is enough to forgive the pretty mundane stuff that they've got prior to it.
See, I would, because if it was a timing thing, and this was the last album that just came out, I mean, I would forgive a lot of that earlier stuff just because that's them sort of finding their stride. But once you get to this point, after I'm hearing Bad Motorfinger, I'm going out and
You're
buying the next
one.
album
Mhm.
as soon as the day that it comes out, guaranteed.
Yes, that's definitely
So
true.
to me,
Okay.
I would be ride or die for this. And sorry to cut you off, Jamie. What were you saying?
That's okay. I'm thinking along the same lines as you. So this again is another first for me because, you know, I'm used to like, okay, this band started in the 90s. Well, it wasn't until Dave was putting his outline together and I kind of came in and he was looking through stuff for this podcast that I realized that these, you know, the first albums were from the 80s. And so that kind of changed my perspective a little bit. And that also on my second listen through, when I kind of found some more that I liked, I feel like that helped. Just to think about it in that perspective, that how long this band has really been putting out music, and how when I think about songs from the 80s, they still sound pretty darn Soundgarden to me. You know what I mean? Like it didn't.
Right.
Yeah, there was the heavy metal aspect and, you know, trying to find their sound, but it still sounds, when I think of it in that context, it still sounds like Soundgarden to me. Yeah, I think I'm on board with you, Zach, that I would be buying the next album that comes out.
Yeah, and this is what's our definition of ride or die, I suppose. But I think an interesting point you guys made was it's an upward trajectory where every album is more or less better than the last. At least if you plot it out, it's headed north. So I think you know, knowing that there's more albums coming, then, you know, you can say you're definitely on board with the band, and you know, we can call that ride or die. You know, I can't say that I'm ride or die for the first 3 albums, you know, but yeah, they're clearly getting better, and of course we know what comes next. So there's still more good stuff to come.
Also, it's super hard to say, you know, when, at least for me, I have not spent near the amount of time on the other albums, you know, and I could see a couple of those songs, you know, not becoming my favorite of all time, Soundgarden, but you know, songs that I'm like, oh yeah, I really like this song, or so I don't know. Certainly those albums are not at the level of Bad Motorfinger.
Yeah, I think I could put together like one 10 or 12 song album from the first 3 albums and like it. So yeah, there's I think there's some good stuff in there for sure, but it's all kind of blown away by Bad Motorfinger.
Yeah.
Other than Beyond the Wheel, I'm not sure there's another song that I would put on Bad Motorfinger to kick another song off.
That's going to do it for this episode. Next month, we will look at the second half of our deep dive into the Soundgarden discography. Tell us what you think of Soundgarden in the comments. Like and subscribe if you're into that kind of thing. And if you want more content like this, you can find everything we do at 64tacos.com. Thanks for listening.
I caught it on audio.
Every time.
Getting fucked in each ear.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Just like you like it.
So